So you want to run Stable Diffusion, but you don't have maybe a fast enough laptop, a laptop with enough resources, a laptop with enough disk space, or maybe you have all those resources, but you don't want to use them all up. Well, you're in the right place. We're going to look at running Stable Diffusion on RunPod.io. And what is RunPod.io? Well, it's renting a GPU in the cloud. It's like Uber or Lyft, but for GPUs. So what's different about this video? Well, this video will show you how to copy checkpoint models directly from an external website like CivitAI or Hugging Face. And we'll look specifically at CivitAI. So what is the benefit of that? Well, you're not downloading huge checkpoint models, 3 gigabytes a piece to your PC, and then uploading them to the web to some data center out in Europe, which is going to take forever and it's going to use up your disk space. So this is the only video I see out there that you can copy files directly from CivitAI into RunPod Stable Diffusion. All right. Architects, architecture students, and students thinking about studying architecture, you're in the right place. Let's get into it. All right, so where do you go? You go to runpod.io and you create an account. So you sign up, and once you sign up, you log in. And what's the first thing that you need to do? The first thing you need to do is go over to billing, and you want to add some credit to your account. So my suggestion is to just start with $10 and see how far that gets you. These GPUs, they cost a certain amount of money per hour, and then the storage, you need some network volume storage, and that costs a certain amount of money per month. So start with $10 and see how far that gets you. Okay, where to go next? Next, you go to pods. And you're going to go to pods and you're going to click on the plus for deploy. Okay, a couple of really important things here. You are renting a GPU, not a CPU, a graphics processing unit, a GPU. You are not going to use Community Cloud. Again, you're not going to use Community Cloud. You have to use Secure Cloud. Community Cloud is less expensive per hour, but you can't use rented storage with Community Cloud. So if you copy files over, you're going to lose those files next time you go to try to run your pod. And we're using Stable Diffusion, and Stable Diffusion requires checkpoint models. They're these large 2, 3, 4 gigabyte files, and you're going to need those every time you're running Stable Diffusion. So you're going to need a network volume drive. So you have to use Secure Cloud. And you don't want global networking on. Global networking on will restrict your options to find GPUs. So by default, that's on. It's set up for failure. I set you up for success now by unchecking global networking. Then you go over to network volume, and you go to plus to add a network volume drive. And you're going to need to pick a data center. Now, these data centers are all over the world. They're in Canada, they're in Europe, they're in the US. And the way you want to select a data center is you want to select it by the availability of GPUs. Let's move myself out of the way here. Okay, so for instance, this Canada MTL-1, it has some GPUs with high availability. So green is high availability, blue is medium availability, and orange is low availability. Okay, so what are we looking for here? Well, we're looking for a data center with some GPUs with decent availability. Now, I like the RTX A4000, if that's available. That's an inexpensive GPU. Then there is the RTX 4090 and the RTX 3090. Those are also really good. They cost a little bit more money per hour. The RTX A5000, of course, is a good one. But again, I like the RTX A4000. But don't worry if you can't use that one. The others that I mentioned will also work. So I'll click on Europe RO-1. And then I'll scroll down. I'll give my network volume a name. I'm just going to call this one Video Test. And I'm going to start with 50 gigabytes. Okay, 50 gigabytes is probably the minimum because these checkpoint models take up so much space. And I'll click on Create. And that's creating my network volume drive. And then I need to select a GPU server to go with it. And I'm selecting the RTX A4000. Then I need a template. Okay, it's not the RunPod PyTorch 2.1. This, you'll be spinning your wheels because nothing will happen. Stable Diffusion won't run. You can't use this one. You have to change the template. And you can type in start to type in Stable Diffusion, and you'll find RunPod Stable Diffusion. So super important that your pod template is the RunPod Stable Diffusion. Okay, so just to kind of go through everything and check and see what we have. So we are running a GPU on a secure cloud. Global networking is off. We have our network volume drive selected in our data center. And then we are picking our GPU, our RTX A4000 in this case. It's 32 cents an hour. We've changed the template to RunPod Stable Diffusion. And we're going to click on Start Jupyter Notebook, and we'll see why in a moment. And then we're going to click on Deploy on Demand. And it takes a little while to create your pod. Okay, so the pod is here. And we're going to click on the little down arrow. And some things are happening in the background. We're going to click on Logs. And this, what you see here, syncing VENV to workspace, please wait. This could take a while on first startup. They're not lying. On first startup, this can take 15, 20, 30 minutes. It can take a while, so you have to be patient. And you'll know when it's done because a whole bunch of other text will show up under syncing VENV to workspace. Now this, you only have to wait this long time the first time that you do it. Just the first time. The times that you load the same pod with the same network volume drive, you won't have to wait. So just wait that first time. Okay, so that probably took forever. Thank you for your patience. Okay, so how do you know when it's done? Well, you get a whole bunch more text that shows up, but the real way that you know that it's done is if I exit this and I go to connect, both HTTP service and Jupyter Lab are ready. And HTTP service, that shows up ready right away. But if you click on it and you get an error, the pod isn't ready, okay? If you click on it and you get this web interface, this Stable Diffusion web interface, then you know everything's working. Now, again, it takes forever the first time. The second time, third time, it does take a little while, but we're talking like 5 minutes the next time you do it. So just be patient that first time around. Okay, so I clicked on the HTTP service and that loaded Stable Diffusion. And Stable Diffusion is ready to go. It doesn't have the Friedman-Redmond safe tensors checkpoint. That's something that I loaded in, but it has these basic ones. So you should be able to just type in a prompt and hit generate and create an image. So let's test it out. So I have a prompt ready to go. I'm going to go to my Word document and just copy it and paste it back in here. So I'm just pasting it into the prompt and I'm just clicking generate. Okay, so it was just a real generic prompt about a skyscraper in a park with some greenery. So it's just, I know Stable Diffusion is working. Okay, so these checkpoints, super important to have checkpoint models when you're running Stable Diffusion. So you have to get those checkpoint models typically from CivitAI or Hugging Face, and you want to copy them directly. As I mentioned in the intro to this video, you want to copy them directly from the web into your Stable Diffusion RunPod without having to download them to your computer and then upload them to your computer. That cancels the whole point of why we're using RunPod, because we don't want to use resources. We don't want to use our computer resources. Plus, downloading 3 gigabyte files and then uploading them to some server in Europe or Canada is going to take forever. So this is the way that you do it. This is the secret to it all. Okay, so what do? You have to log on to CivitAI. Okay, you have to log on to CivitAI. So you have to go to civitai.com and you have to make an account and sign in. Okay, so now you're signed into CivitAI. So we're going to start looking at some checkpoint models that we want to download. So one that I use a lot is called architectural real mix. And you can just go to your, go to your web browser and type in architectural real mix CivitAI, and you'll find the architectural real mix. When I'm making this video, at the time I'm making this video, it's architectural real mix version 1.1, and you see here where I'm circling my mouse around. Okay, and it says download 1.99 gigabytes, so just about 2 gigabytes. Okay, so if I right click on this and I choose copy link address, and then I go over to the web browser and I Control V to paste it, the way that I know this is gonna work over in RunPod is if I press enter, I'm gonna get a pop-up where it's telling me to save the file. So I know that link is good. And if you get an error, chances are you're not logged in, okay, to CivitAI. So just log into CivitAI when you're doing this just to avoid any errors. Okay, so what do I want to do? Well, I suggest taking this information and copying it into a Word doc. Okay, so what does that mean? So make yourself a Word doc. And for instance, I put the title Architecture Real Mix, and then I copied in, this is from, if I go right click and choose copy link address and I go back over to Word just to show you what that is from, if I just paste this in. Okay, that's from CivitAI, but there's a special thing here to get this to work. That is something new, and there are no videos out there showing how to do this. So you need to have this token. Okay, so basically I can get rid of all of this back-end stuff up to the models, up to the models number. That needs to stay. So just to double check, if I take this and I copy and paste it into a web browser, it's going to pop up, you see, it's going to pop up architecture real mix.safe tensor. So it's ready to go. So I didn't need all that back-end stuff, but I need an API key for this to work in RunPod. So where do I get my API key? I go over to my profile. I go all the way down to account settings. And then I scroll down in account settings, and there's API keys. And I click plus add API key, and I give it a name. Okay, you go ahead and you name it. I'm going to name this O2 because I already have one. And I press save. And here is the key. So you have to copy that key into, so it's copied, you have to copy that into your Word document. So super important that you have these Word documents. So CivitAI API key, this is my second one here. Okay, and so where does that go? That goes at the end of your link. You put in question mark, the word token, the equal sign, and then you put the API key in. Okay, no space. Okay, so this is what we're going to use over in RunPod to get that checkpoint model over to RunPod without downloading it to our computer and then uploading it, and that process just takes forever. So this is a quick shortcut. So I'm going to Control C to copy that, and I'm going to go over to my pods here, and I'm going to launch the Jupyter Lab. So what is Jupyter Lab? It's basically a file explorer. Okay, it's just a web version of the file explorer. So it shows you all the files that you have. Okay, that took a little time to load up, but something important about this. So you're working in Workspace. Remember, you're working in Workspace. You're not working in the root folder. So after you click on the root folder, you'll see there's a stable diffusion. Do not work in that stable diffusion folder. It will not work for you. You have to work in the Workspace folder. Then the Workspace folder, stable diffusion. And if you go into stable diffusion, just make this a little bigger for us. So you see my path here. root folder, workspace, stable diffusion dash web UI. And then I'm going down to models. And then in models, I'm going to stable diffusion. So a little bit of a tricky path, okay? So root folder, workspace, stable diffusion, web UI, models, stable diffusion. And there's a little note in here. It says put stable diffusion checkpoints here, .txt. All right, how do you get them here? That's what we're trying to do. All right, click on the terminal. That loads up. You type in the command wget space, and then you paste in that link from the Word document, and you press enter. And it starts copying the file. Okay, you see there's a percentage of that happening here. Let me move myself over here. Okay, so you see that's copying. And then it starts putting a file here with the strange name with your token. This, you're just going to end up renaming it. And you can rename it at any time. You can rename it while it's copying over. You can just right-click and rename it. I like to rename it the name that it is from CivitAI. So I'm going to copy and I'm going to paste this in over here. So I'm going to click on it, right-click on it, choose rename, paste architectural real mix. Now what's really important is the extension. It has to be .safe tensors. Okay, it has to be .safe tensors. You can't skip that step. So you see these other ones, they're all .safe tensors. So that should just remind you. So that's how we're going to rename it. Okay, we're renaming it. It is, looks like it's all done. How do we know if it's done? Well, we go over to Stable Diffusion and we see if we can find it from our pull down. Okay, I don't see it and you won't see it. You have to click on the refresh button. So I click on the refresh button. I go to my list. I see it, Architectural Real Mix. I select it. The first time you select it, it has to process it. It has to load that checkpoint model in. So that can take a little bit of time. So let's generate that with this checkpoint model. Okay, so you see it's very different than Friedman-Redman, just based on the way that the model is trained. It got very upright and stiff with the architectural real mix. Okay, what else do we need to cover? Well, some of these checkpoint models, so for instance, there's a few of these that I use. There's one called DreamShaper, CivitAI, DreamShaper 8. And this one does not have a download. It has a create. So I can't right click on that because there's no copy link address. But if I right click over the download button and then I choose copy link address, then I can paste that in. So that's DreamShaper. Okay, remember, we're going to get rid of everything up to the model number. And you should always just test that. Just Control-C, go over to a web browser, open a web browser, Control-V, paste it, and see if you get the pop-up to save the file. If you're getting the pop-up to save the file, you are all good. That's a good link. And then remember, you just need to copy the token afterwards. So you put in the question mark, token, equal sign, go ahead and grab your API key and paste that in, and then take the whole link, head on over to your Jupyter lab, and you can type in wget space, paste the link, hit enter, and it starts loading that in. All right, what else do we need to cover? Well, where is it putting your outputs? Okay, that's a great question. Where is it putting your outputs? Before I do that, let me go ahead and rename this. I'm going to rename this. This is my DreamShaper Safe Tensors. Okay, so that's working. Okay, so where do we go? Well, we're going to go to Workspace, and we're going to go to Stable Diffusion Web UI, and we're going to go down to Outputs. Okay, and then we're going to go to, we're making text to images. So if I go to text to images, my output files are there. So if I go to that folder, I can see the output files that I made today. So it's folders per day. So just keep in mind, it's going to make a new folder for every day that you create an image. Okay, most important step is when you are done. When you are done, you need to terminate your pod. It's not enough to just close the Jupyter window and close Stable Diffusion. You have to go back over to RunPod. I can close this window, and you have to click on the garbage can to terminate. And that might be scary the first time you do it. It is not going to delete your network volume drive. Your network volume drive is going to be there. It's just deleting this particular pod. So you click yes. That's super important. You want to terminate the pod. If you don't terminate the pod, you're going to continue to be charged hourly for the pod, and we do not want that to happen. So we're going to terminate pod. We're going to say yes. It says I have no pods, but if I go to storage, I have my network volume drive. So as long as every time I launch a pod, I go to deploy, I choose my network volume drive, I'm all good. I'm all good because I have my network volume drive. So that's super important. All right, I hope you enjoyed this video. Have fun with RunPod, running Stable Diffusion. Have fun with Stable Diffusion. Can't wait to use Stable Diffusion 3.5, which is out at the time I'm making this video. All right, have a great one, and I'll see you on the next one.